and that they don't try and do it all themselves, especially small, medium business size owners. You cannot do everything yourself. You need to look at what new technology can support your business, because the way the marketplace has changed and is changing constantly, technology is the way forward. You have to uptake your business.
Great. Then here on Afternoon Tech, we have Lauren, who is a coach and mentor. She is she has done pretty much sessions about personality development, mentoring, and like it's all about you as a person. So, Lauren, would you like to elaborate more on yourself?
Okay, so I'm a coach for Live Your Best Life coaching and mentoring consulting. I've been a coach for well over 15 years now, and I've worked with a variety of different industries. I've been in the financial industry, I've been in education, and normal consulting, business coaching and mentoring. So it's quite a lot that I've done. And I've obviously worked with lots and lots of people. So when you asked me about talking about fear and things that people could be afraid of, and in your terms, because you're busy with technology, talking about fear of technology, I thought that would be quite a nice thing for us to discuss as well. So yeah, so just from that point of view, I think that there's quite a lot that goes on, and I think that it's a very relevant topic, because people, as I've spoken about fear in some of my other recordings before, people are afraid of different things for different reasons, and that makes it quite an interesting thing. So in business, obviously, there's different kinds of fears to our personal fears. Sometimes they can overlap and be interlinked as well. Yeah. So I think as we talk, we'll discover a little bit more about that.
So, as our topic for today is like fear of digital innovation or fear about technology. So, you have also previously done such sessions before, especially on personal fear. So, do you think that these two things are different or they are same? Like, do they intersect somewhere, or is it like this fear is completely different than this fear? The concepts are totally different. What do you feel about it?
I think some of them have got some underlying similarities, because obviously fear is something that makes people feel vulnerable. And I think that's why they become afraid. So in personal things, obviously we've talked about fear of different types of phobias, like swimming or water or spiders, or, you know, those kinds of fear of heights. Those are all very common ones. Fear of public speaking, I think, is a very common one. So, you know, those are all common fears that we all experience, I think, at some point of time, you know, in our lifetimes. We'll experience them somewhere where we're nervous, we're afraid to do something. For some people, it's just a very basic fear, like they're just nervous. And then for others, it's almost a paralyzing fear, where it completely paralyzes them into a state of not being able to even do anything. Right, so those are obviously, it can be quite difficult for people like that to manage those fears, because it's like it's stopping them from living a normal life, you know. And that's where the technology side, when we were talking about technology, there is similarities, because for some people, especially in business, right now technology is developing so fast. So for some people, they have a fear of trying to keep up with that technology, and they have a fear of how that technology is going to impact their business, and they have those kinds of fears. And in fact, it might not debilitate them in their personal life, but it's debilitating and cutting their business, because they don't have that ability to move forward and to keep up with where the marketplace is. So there are some similarities, definitely. And I think in terms of the way that people manage those fears, there are some similarities as well, because there's obviously, you could do coaching, therapies, there's so many different things that one can do, but there's a very definite foundation which is similar. That's my opinion. You know, it's not, everyone might not agree, but I think if I look at it, I think there are some similarities, because it does stop you from making progress. It prevents you from making proper business decisions. It could maybe even stop you from taking projects and things like that. So it definitely is stopping things. So it might not stop your personal life, but it's definitely impacting the life of the individual as the company. And that's, I think, where technology can sometimes stop people from moving forward.
Well, that's pretty well said, actually. And as you say, like, it all comes back to the adaptation. It all comes back to your comfort zone. It all comes back to your way of looking at things. So generally people have, like, most of them have a conception that if you take a risk, you are dealing a fear in a better way. So do you think that this might demotivate them more? Like, is it a better way to take a risk to tackle fear?
In some ways, yes. Sometimes it's good to just take the fear head on and say, yes, I'm just going to take the risk, close my eyes and do it. And
Okay.
then maybe it'll work. And I think for some people, they have used certain therapies, like therapeutic methods to do that. Like you'll see some extreme life coaches and things like that. They'll say to someone, okay, to get over your fear of spiders, we're going to do some like, mental mindset work. And then we're just going to go and you're going to hold a spider, and you'll be over it. Now, I personally always use the example of spiders because I am petrified of spiders. There's a good reason why I'm petrified of spiders, because I had one fall on my head while I was sleeping. So I woke up, this thing was on my face and it was massive. So in South Africa, very big spiders. So I have a very real fear of spiders.
That's scary.
Exactly. So if someone said to me, okay, you're just going to get over your fear by going and holding another bigger one, I'd be like, hell no. Not going to happen. So I think for some people that like head on thing definitely works, because they need that push, like that deliberate push forward to just, get on it, let's go, let's do it. For other people, they might need different things. So they might need an approach which is more of a structured approach, where they might need some coaching. Like if you think of CBT is quite popular in psychology, like with cognitive behavioral therapies and things like that. But in coaching, we have CBC, which is cognitive behavioral coaching.
Right.
And we can help the person to identify those things which they are struggling with or have a fear of, but then put a structure in place to help them to get through it. And they can put goals in place to help them to actually achieve it at their pace. So there is a bit of a push and a pull, but it's not just a push like right off the ledge. It's not like that. It's more of a working with the person to help them to overcome that fear, and for them to be able to take that risk, but to manage the risk. And especially in business, because in business, you do need to take a measure of risk, because obviously being an entrepreneur and going into business, that itself is a risk. Not everybody can do it. It's special people to be entrepreneurs, because you need to have some grit and tenacity, and you need to have that like thing that I want to achieve something in my life to be able to be successful. So it's not everybody who can do that. So it's the same thing here with business. You're also taking a risk, and you're also putting all your effort in. So naturally, if you're going to be fearful of something, you are going to have to take some risks to be able to overcome that. And with coaching, I think that's where it's quite important, that maybe to find a coach that can work with you and say, okay, look, I have this problem. Because of course in coaching, that's the first thing that's very important, is the person has to say, I have a problem and I want to change it. That's very important. So, and then once they accept that, that's where the coaching plan can then be put in place to help them. So I think and then the coach is the one that can help them modulate and moderate the risk that moves forward.
Right. So how in this terms calculated risk is advantageous? Like mostly they say that you should take a risk, but take a calculated risk. So is there any connection? Like, I might sound crazy, but is there any connection between calculated risk and cognitive behavior? Like, is there any connection between them?
Well, I think so, because obviously with your cognitive behavior, it's to see how the person thinks and what are the behaviors that are causing a certain way of behaving. So you have to understand what triggers you. So if there's like me, for example, my trigger was the fact that this thing fell on my face in the middle of the night. So for me, that's what triggered the phobia. I was never scared of spiders before that, but that started it. And so for some people, it was to try and identify what was the trigger point. Why are they afraid of that particular thing? So it's understand the behavior behind it. And then to take the risk in moving forward would then be taking a calculated risk, because you understand where the source of it is. And that's the thing, is in business and stuff like that, the source of that fear might be, for example, your age. You might be an older person who's gone into business, and you just have a general fear of technology because that technology wasn't there when you were younger. So it might be that you don't understand it, or that you don't understand what it can do for you, just mainly because it's not in that generation that you were there initially when it was started coming forth and started being more available. So you've got to, I think, as for coaches, we definitely look at sources of things, like what is the underlying causes, where does it come from, and how can one change it. But then, like as you were saying, you've got to see how the two are correlating and how they line up to each other, and they definitely do, because obviously with risk has to be calculated in business. You can't just be like, what do they call it, like a slingshot person, like a gunshot. You just keep on like firing off different things, because then you're going to fail. Your business is going to fail because you're taking too many risks and you're not thinking about what the impact is going to be. But in technology, because of technology and the way technology is developed, it's a beautiful thing, especially at the moment. I mean, we were just talking about it a few minutes ago, about how technology is actually helping everyone right now, because it's helping you stay in touch, it's helping you stay in business. And for businesses that haven't kept up with technology, COVID-19 has been a massive wake-up call. It's kind of gone, oh, you have to be available online. Like, if you're not available online, it's going to be tough.
It is. So it is actually, they say that everything has its pros and cons. Same with COVID-19, like, though it's causing so much disaster, but it's giving some lessons that you have to do some changes. And as we go back to the calculated risk thing, it's all come back to the fact that if you want to take risk, be aware of it, have some knowledge about it. So the consequences are like way lesser.
Absolutely. That's exactly, you've got to calculate it, and you've got to see that, because you don't want the impact to be so bad that your business suffers too much at the end of the day. So you've got to, as the business owner, you need to take those risks, but you've got to do a plan. It's the same as doing a business plan. You've got to put those things in place, have a look at it, see what's possible. And you can't foretell the future. None of us can, but you've got to be able to try and future-proof your business by taking calculated risks.
That's true. So that's bring me to my next question. Like, is the journey of overcoming one fear, say overcoming the fear of technology, is it a long journey, or is it like there is a shortcut to something?
I think that's going to depend a lot on the person and what they're worried about or what they're fearful of with the technology. Because, there's some things that might just be, like I mentioned, it might be someone who's just maybe a bit older and they just fearful because they're not sure what technology can do for them. So they have that fear of the unknown. They don't know how it can help them, how it can benefit them. They just don't understand the technology behind it. I mean, when tech guys start talking about algorithms and all this kind of stuff, some people go like, hey, what are you trying? Like, what are you saying? And when they start talking about the coding or things, people just they're like, I don't understand that. So I don't know. And that creates fear, because it's a fear of something they don't understand.
Right.
So the importance there is that the journey is going to be as long as you decide for it to be. Because if you have someone who's helping you, like if you have a business coach, for example, that's helping you through your business and saying, okay, well, these are the things that you said you needed, but you're obviously worried about how it works, then you've got to say, okay, well, in terms of my business plan, if I don't do this, what is going to happen? And if I do, what is going to happen? So you've got to look at it from both sides and say, well, what is the best thing that can happen if I go ahead and take this risk? And what is the absolute worst thing that's going to happen if I don't take the risk? So you've got to weigh them up and then kind of strategize it and put that strategy in place. So, and it also, like I said, depends on why that fear is there. If it's just the fear of the unknown or fear of like, I don't understand it, that's something that can probably get overcome with a bit of education. Like if you get a bit of education, go watch some webinars, go talk to some people, interview some tech guys, ask someone to explain the technology to you, do a bit of research on that. I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to overcome that fear because you'll have a better understanding of it. If it's something worse, like maybe your company got hacked and like all your personal data got destroyed and got strewn all over the internet, and that might be different, because then you're going to maybe have to get some additional advice on what security measures to put in place. That fear might be a bit more real, because it's actually happened to you. It's not just something that you're thinking is happening. It has actually happened, and I think we've seen that a couple of times now over the past few years where big corporations have been hacked and their data has been all over the place, and they've had to pay fines and they've been sanctioned and all sorts of things because of that data breach. But again, that just shows you that if the correct measures are in place, then that it minimizes the fear. It's never going to take the risk away. It's never going to take that fear away completely, but it can minimize. You can put things in place to minimize it or minimize the impact that it could have.
Right. So it brings up to me my follow-up question that it's, as you say, the consequences, like just taking an example of getting system hacked. So it's a nightmare for someone, especially for business, to see that their business is like gone in one night. So how to overcome the fear that has arisen due to these consequences, like because obviously it will demotivate someone to a very extreme low level. So how they can just pull themselves out?
I think their education is very important
Mhm.
because it's to know what's available to help you.
Right,
It's, it's like taking somebody who's sick. Like if you've got a disease and you're ill, you want to find out what's going to help you to get better. So
right.
you'll do a lot of research. You'll do a lot of, you'll look on the internet. You'll look, Google, Dr. Google. he's going to give you lots of information, which could make it worse because then you might self-diagnose yourself.
Yeah.
It can refer you to people who know. You can find companies and people who know and doctors who know and get in contact with them and talk to them about why you're sick and those underlying problems and things like that. And I think here it's the same with technology. If you've experienced something like that, you've got to go back and say, well, why did this happen?
Right.
Is it something that I've overlooked in my business that made me do this, or that made someone make me an easy target? What made me an easy target in this case? Because maybe your security systems weren't good enough. Maybe you didn't have enough passwords. Maybe in your internal systems weren't properly password protected. Maybe your networks were too open. There's a lot of things that when it comes to technology breaches, that companies will have to go and do an audit and say, well, what was our missing link? How did a hacker find that missing link?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And then they have to go patch that, fix it, and build something stronger.
Mhm.
And that can only be done really with consultants and security, like network consultants and things like that, to be able to talk to people and say, look, so network security consultants, especially, where they specialize in looking at what are the problems there. Now, for small businesses, that most likely is never going to happen. If you're a small business owner, to go and talk to a security network consultant is most likely never going to be something that you need to worry about.
Right.
But what you need to worry about is making sure that you are compliant with the ICO, for example,
Yeah.
making sure that if you are keeping private data, if you're doing payments, online payments, things like that, that you're using the best technology available to protect yourself and your customer. I think that's
Right.
very important. Not just thinking of you anymore. You've got to think of your customer as well.
Yeah.
So it's, even though it's terrible for the business to experience that hack, it's almost worse for the customer because they weren't expecting it. They were trusting you with that information. And if you've taken it and it's been hacked and you've not done anything about it, that's going to cause serious problems within your customer relationship. So you've got to, as the company, you've got to make sure that, first of all, if you are going to keep personal data, make sure that you are putting the proper systems in place. And if that means talking to an IT guy and saying, look, what is going to be the right thing for me to do? Get advice, get educated. I think that's the biggest thing for people. People don't want to ask people for information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they need to ask. And, sometimes you've got to pay for it. It's just one of those things. Like in business, you can't say, well, I don't want to pay for it. How many freebies can I get?
Yeah.
That people, consultants and things, they work on the premise that you're going to pay them for their time and they're going to make sure that your business runs efficiently and they're going to do the best job possible. But if you just want to get freebies all the time, then you are putting yourself at risk as well. So it is important, I think, for business owners to acknowledge that they need help sometimes. Sometimes you need to pay for that help. And at the same time, you also need to look at how like what things you can do as a business owner to protect yourself and your company. So get yourself educated, go and read some blogs, go and talk to some tech guys. All the antivirus companies and technology companies, they've got so much information online. You just need to go and have a look at it, and go read up about it. And then you know what kind of questions to ask as well when you start talking to your tech guys.
That's true. That's very true, Lauren. Like all those resources are available online as well. And if you are not aware of anything, you can always consult someone. People are always ready to help. Like
Exactly.
mostly I can understand for some, like they might have some bad experience that they went to a wrong consultant and they were charged a hefty fee for no service. So that might be the reason for them, but not everyone are same. We cannot put everyone in one frame.
It's true. Well, it's true. There are some people who just don't do a good job. But
Yeah.
if you've been burned, I think the important thing is because it's the same with coaching. I've experienced that as well. I've had lots of people say to me, oh, but I went to this coach and this happened. And that does happen. There are people who are unqualified. They
Yeah.
don't follow any ethical codes. That you've got to see, is the person certified? Like if you're having network IT guys, like what are their certifications? Who do they answer to when things go wrong? or what information can they give me? Like what do they base their information on? Is it just something they sucked out of the air, or is there some concrete information available? How do they support that, that resource that they're giving me? How do they support? So I think from that point of view, and also results, if they've got clients who can refer them and things like that, that makes a big difference, because you can always say to them, well, do you have any references? That's a very good way to find out. If someone says to you, I've got no references, that might be something to think about, but if they've got one client that they can say, oh, well, I've done some work for this client or that client, they'll be happy to refer me. Or if you have a look on my LinkedIn, there's some people who referred me on LinkedIn. That just gives people some confidence that they are dealing with someone who is upfront and who's up, trying to do a good job and is going to provide them with a good service. I think that's what's quite important.
That's true. That's true. So it brings me to our last question. Like, when it comes to services like us, as we provide home chefs and local food artisans and market stall people, we provide them a digital platform to sell their food. So obviously we are a third party service and we are new to them. So there will be a fear of trust. There will be a fear of like, is it trustworthy? So what's your suggestion for them to how they can adapt to our services or any services like us? What should be their mindset?
Well, I think for a small business, when you've got a product that you want to get to market, it's quite important to look at what technologies are available. Because sometimes, Amazon is not always the right place, and eBay is not always the right place, because you get lost in the volume of what is there. So, if, you could have that as one platform, absolutely. But you do get lost in the process, especially if you've got a very niche product, or you've got something that's very specific to a local area and things like that. That makes it a lot harder to deal with those kinds of companies. And that's where companies such as yourself are obviously a lot better, because you're dealing with clients on a probably more personal basis.
So we do.
So they've got a lot more access to you. Whereas, like, if they call Amazon or eBay, they're on hold for an hour at least before they get to talk to anybody. So that makes a big difference as well. And I think for companies such as yourself, for small businesses, is for them to be able to understand that there's not always an answer in a bigger company. Sometimes you need to look at smaller developing companies that can offer you a much better service to get your product to market and in front of the people that you want to have your product in front of. Because of course, like with yourselves, you're a niche, you're looking at food industry and things like that. So in your niche, you're able to provide that advice and authority, because that's your specialism. That's where you specialize. You're not covering the entire, product markets of every company in every country. You're looking at a specific market. So it's important for companies that are looking for that kind of service, where they're going to have somebody looking at a niche market. They're going to get better advice, because you can provide them with a bit more information, because you've also done your research. You understand what the consumer is looking for, so how you can present that to the consumer and things like that. So for people to overcome that fear, I think it's quite important to build a relationship, and that's obviously up to you as your company to be able to put that forward and say, well, look, we're here, this is what we offer, to be quite transparent, to show them, look, these are the services that we offer, this is what we can provide you with, and this is how we're going to promote your product so that you can get to market as quickly as possible and in a way that is easily accessible for your customer. I think for small businesses, they need to understand that there is better ways of doing things than just doing it yourself. Sometimes if that is not your skill or not your technique, it's really important to outsource skills that you don't have. And I think for entrepreneurs, one of the things I've seen that is one of the biggest problems is thinking that you can do it all yourself. You cannot do it all yourself. You might save a little bit of money here and there, but in the long run, you're going to waste all that money and on time, because your time is much more valuable.
That's true.
If you're an entrepreneur who's good at making your product, make your product and find somebody who can promote and sell your product for you. Because if sales is not your thing, or marketing is not your thing, or technology is not your thing, you're going to spend hours and hours and hours wasted on trying to figure those things out. And that probably will make you more fearful, because you're not going to understand it.
That's
like,
true.
Someone has to understand how to code a shop website and stuff, like, write all that code. I can't understand it. So I don't want to do that. But I've got a product that I want to get to market. My biggest thing is I don't want my product to sit on my shelf. I want my product in my customer's hand. So, for me personally, I think that it's very important that, one, that small businesses or business owners become aware of the technology that's available,
Mm-hmm.
that they try and be open-minded, and that they don't try and do it all themselves, especially small, medium business size owners. You cannot do everything yourself. You need to look at what new technology can support your business, because the way the marketplace has changed and is changing constantly, technology is the way forward. You have to uptake your business.
It's true. Like, it's very well said that you need to get into it, and you cannot go alone by yourself for long. It's like an ecosystem. You have to be part of it.
Yes.
So that's bring to the conclusion of our session, and also like to wrap things up. It's to summarize everything. It's as good as saying, like, if you want to conquer your fear regarding with technology, it's about getting adapt to it, getting aware of it, getting right information from the right source, and asking people.
That's
That's
just talk to people. That's been good. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Lauren, for your time, and thank you for being part of this session. And thanks as well for sharing all your experience and knowledge with us. Definitely, it will help some businesses out there. Thanks for that.
It's a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Bye then.
Bye.